We live in a world that celebrates planning. From the moment we wake up, we are taught to organize, schedule, calculate, and control. We plan our days, our careers, our finances, our futures. We are told that if we can just plan well enough, think far enough ahead, and prepare for every possibility, then we will finally have peace. But deep down, many of us know the truth. Even the most perfect plan can fall apart in a moment. A phone call can change everything. A diagnosis can rearrange priorities. A loss can shatter timelines, and suddenly the plan we trusted feels powerless. Yet there is something stronger than a perfect plan. There is something steadier than human preparation. There is something more reliable than our best intentions. That is the presence of God. From the very beginning of the day, before our feet touch the floor and before our minds race ahead, what we need most is not control over the day but companionship with God. His presence does not depend on circumstances. It does not disappear when plans fail. It does not weaken when the road becomes unclear. God's presence remains, and that presence is enough. So many people begin their mornings already exhausted, not because the day has been difficult, but because the weight of expectation is heavy. We feel pressure to get everything right, to make no mistakes, to prove our worth. But God never asked us to carry the day alone. He invites us to walk with Him through it. When God is present, we don't have to know everything in advance. We only have to trust the one who does. God's presence brings peace that planning alone can never give. You can plan every hour of your day and still feel anxious. You can prepare for every meeting and still feel uncertain. But when God is with you, peace settles not because everything is predictable, but because everything is held by Him. Peace is not the absence of problems, it is the assurance of God's nearness. There are moments when we are tempted to believe that God is only with us when life is smooth and predictable, but His presence is not limited to success or clarity. He is present in confusion. He is present in waiting. He is present when the next step is unclear. In fact, it is often in those moments that His presence becomes most powerful. Many people spend their lives chasing the perfect plan, believing that once they have it, they will finally feel secure. But the truth is, security does not come from knowing what will happen tomorrow. It comes from knowing who walks with you today. God never promised us a life without uncertainty, but He did promise that He would never leave us nor forsake us. When God is present, even interruptions have purpose. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually divine protection. Sometimes what feels like a closed door is God's mercy steering us away from harm we cannot yet see. If we trust only our plans, interruptions frustrate us. But if we trust God's presence, interruptions refine us. God's presence also reshapes our priorities. When we walk with Him, success is no longer measured only by achievements, but by faithfulness. The world asks, "What did you accomplish?" God asks, "Did you trust me?" The world values speed. God values surrender. The world pushes productivity. God invites intimacy. There are days when our plans work perfectly, and there are days when nothing goes as expected. On both days, God's presence is the same. He is not more present on good days or less present on hard ones. His faithfulness does not rise and fall with our circumstances. That truth frees us from panic when things go wrong and from pride when things go right. When we begin our day aware of God's presence, our reactions change. We respond instead of react. We listen instead of rushing. We speak with grace instead of anger. God's presence acts like an anchor for the soul, keeping us steady when emotions try to pull us in every direction. Many people are tired because they are trying to control outcomes that only God can manage. They carry tomorrow's worries into today's strength. But when we rest in God's presence, we learn to take the day one step at a time. God does not overwhelm us with the entire journey. He gives light for the next step, and that is enough. God's presence matters more than a perfect plan because His presence brings wisdom that plans cannot predict. There are decisions we make that look right on paper but feel wrong in the spirit, and there are paths that seem uncertain but are filled with peace. When God is present, He guides us not only through logic but through discernment. In moments of weakness, plans offer no comfort, but God's presence does. When strength fades and confidence wavers, it is not a schedule that holds us together, but the quiet assurance that God is near. His presence whispers hope when our thoughts grow loud with fear. God's presence also gives meaning to ordinary moments. Not every day will be extraordinary, but every day can be sacred. A simple conversation, an unnoticed act of kindness, a quiet moment of prayer, these become powerful when God is present. He turns ordinary days into holy ground. There are times when God allows our plans to fail so that we can learn to trust His presence more deeply. Not as punishment, but as invitation. He invites us away from self-reliance and into relationship. He reminds us that life was never meant to be lived independently of Him. God's presence teaches us patience. Plans demand speed, presence teaches waiting. In a world that rushes answers, God often works in seasons. He is not late and He is not early, He is precise. When we learn to value His presence, waiting no longer feels empty. It becomes a place of growth. When God is present, fear loses its power. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but faith grows in presence. Knowing that God is with you does not mean you will never feel afraid, but it means fear no longer has the final word. God's presence speaks louder than your worries. God's presence also humbles us. It reminds us that we are not in control, and that is not a weakness, but a relief. We were never meant to carry the weight of the world. When God is present, we can release what we were never designed to hold. There is deep freedom in choosing God's presence over a perfect plan, freedom from anxiety, freedom from comparison, freedom from the constant pressure to perform. When God walks with you, your identity is secure even when outcomes are uncertain. At the end of the day, when plans are evaluated and tasks are unfinished, what remains is not what we achieved, but how we walked. Did we trust God when things were unclear? Did we remain faithful when things were hard? Did we seek His presence above our own understanding? God's presence gives us courage to move forward even when the path is not fully revealed. Faith is not seeing the whole staircase. It is taking the next step with God, and every step taken with Him is a step taken in confidence, even when answers are incomplete. There will be days when plans collapse and nights when questions linger. In those moments, God does not abandon us. He draws nearer. His presence becomes our refuge, our strength, and our peace. He does not promise a life without storms, but He promises to be with us in the boat. So as each new day begins, we do not ask for perfect plans. We ask for God's presence. We ask Him to walk with us, guide us, correct us, and comfort us, because a day filled with His presence is richer than a day filled with success. When the future feels uncertain and the road ahead unclear, we remember this truth. God's presence matters more than a perfect plan, and when He is with us, we have everything we need. Every day arrives quietly, often without ceremony. The sun rises, alarms ring, routines repeat, and life moves forward whether we feel ready or not. In the middle of this ordinary rhythm, God extends an extraordinary invitation, not to escape the day, but to walk through it with Him. When we give time to God daily, something remarkable happens. Ordinary moments begin to carry eternal meaning. So many people believe they will seek God when life slows down, when problems are solved, when they feel more spiritual or less busy. But that moment rarely comes. Life does not pause, responsibilities do not wait, and yet God does not ask for perfect conditions. He asks for a willing heart. He asks for time, not because He needs it, but because we do. When we begin our day with God, we are not adding another task to our schedule. We are setting the direction of our soul. just as a compass determines the path of a traveler. Time with God determines the course of our day. Without it, we drift. With it, we walk with purpose. Daily time with God changes how we see ourselves. The world constantly tells us who we are based on performance, appearance, success, and approval. But in God's presence, those voices grow quiet. We are reminded that our worth is not earned. It is given. We are not defined by yesterday's mistakes or today's pressures. We are known, loved, and called by God. That truth, embraced each morning, reshapes the way we carry ourselves through the day. When a person spends time with God, fear loses its grip. Worries may still come, but they no longer rule the heart. Why? Because fear thrives in uncertainty, but God's presence brings assurance. In prayer, we are reminded that we are not facing the day alone. The same God who holds the universe holds our lives, and that realization turns anxiety into trust and panic into peace. Daily time with God also transforms our thoughts. Left unchecked, the mind can become a battlefield, filled with doubt, negativity, resentment, and regret. But when we bring our thoughts before God, He begins to renew them. He replaces lies with truth. He replaces confusion with clarity. He replaces despair with hope. Slowly, quietly, the way we think begins to change, and as our thoughts change, so does our life. Ordinary moments, like driving to work, preparing meals, answering emails, or caring for family, often feel insignificant. But when God is invited into them, they become sacred. A simple task done with a surrendered heart becomes an act of worship. A routine responsibility becomes a testimony of faithfulness. Nothing is wasted when it is offered to God. Daily time with God changes how we respond to people. Instead of reacting with anger, we learn to respond with grace. Instead of holding grudges, we learn to forgive. Instead of speaking carelessly, we learn to speak with wisdom. God's presence softens our hearts, making room for compassion where bitterness once lived. We live in a world that celebrates speed, fast success, fast answers, fast results. But God often works slowly and deeply. Time spent with Him teaches us patience. It reminds us that growth is a process, not a moment. Just as a tree grows silently underground before it is seen above, God works within us long before His work is visible to others. Daily time with God also strengthens us for trials. It does not prevent hardship, but it prepares us for it. When storms come, and they will, we are not shaken as easily because our roots go deep. We have learned to trust God in the quiet moments, so we can rely on Him in the difficult ones. Many people pray only when they are desperate. But God invites us into a relationship, not an emergency contact. When prayer becomes a daily habit instead of a last resort, our faith matures. We stop seeing God only as a rescuer and begin knowing Him as a companion. Spending time with God daily also brings direction. Life is full of choices, some small and some life-changing. Without guidance, we rely on our limited understanding, but in God's presence, wisdom is given. Sometimes He gives clear answers, sometimes He gives peace while we wait. Either way, we learn to trust His timing over our urgency. Daily time with God reminds us of what truly matters. It pulls our focus away from temporary things and fixes it on eternal truth. Success, money, and recognition lose their power when compared to purpose, faith, and obedience. We begin to live not just for today, but for something greater than ourselves. When we spend time with God, gratitude grows. We start noticing blessings we once overlooked. A quiet morning, a kind word, a moment of rest. Gratitude changes the atmosphere of the heart. It turns what we have into enough. It turns ordinary days into meaningful ones. God also uses daily time with Him to heal us. Some wounds are hidden, carried silently for years. In His presence, healing begins gently, not always instantly, but faithfully. He restores what life has broken. He binds what pain has torn apart, and He does it through relationship, not distance. Daily time with God builds consistency in faith. Feelings may change, but discipline keeps us grounded. There will be days when prayer feels easy and days when it feels difficult. But faithfulness in those moments shapes character. It teaches us to seek God not only when we feel close to Him, but because we trust Him. As time with God becomes a priority, obedience becomes more natural. Not forced, not fearful, but willing, we begin to desire what pleases Him because our hearts are aligned with His. Obedience stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like freedom. Ordinary moments transformed by God also impact others. A calm response, a loving action, a word of encouragement. People may never hear your prayers, but they will see the fruit of them. A life shaped by daily time with God becomes a living testimony. God never wastes time spent with Him. Even when we feel nothing, He is working. Even when prayers feel repetitive, He is listening. Even when answers seem delayed, He is preparing us. Faith is built not in one powerful moment, but in many quiet ones. As the day ends, time with God gives us rest, not just physical rest, but soul, deep peace. We release the day into His hands, its victories, its failures, its unanswered questions. We sleep knowing that God is still at work even when we are not. Daily time with God does not make life perfect, but it makes life purposeful. It does not remove every problem, but it provides strength to face them. It does not change every circumstance, but it transforms the heart within those circumstances. And that is how ordinary moments become extraordinary, not because life changes instantly, but because God is present continually. When we walk with Him daily, every step matters, every moment counts. And every day becomes a journey of faith, guided by His love. A life spent with God is never wasted. A day begun with Him is never empty, and an ordinary moment, touched by His presence, becomes eternal.